Coming to you from the Commodity Classic at the Cargill booth. I'm Carah Hart with Brownfield Ag News. We're going to be talking about healthy soils and carbon and more today. Joining me on stage, we've got two experts from the Cargill team. Clay Edwards sitting next to me, a Sustainability Program Lead, and sitting on the far right of me is Anna Teeter, a Conservation Agronomist. Thank you both for joining us here at Classic. To kick things off, tell us a little bit about you and your role with Cargill.
Yeah, thanks, Carah, and really happy to have the opportunity to be here today and with you. I think there's just a lot that we want to continue to share. And so I'm a South Dakota native, grew up on a cattle ranch, farming operation there, and currently live in Illinois with my wife and 3 girls on a small family farm. And everything in agriculture, we live it, breathe it every day.
What about you, Anna?
Yeah, so I'm currently residing in Minnesota, Conservation Agronomist, so I cover the northern Midwest states, Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, where we're currently getting snow, unlike here in Orlando, which I'm loving. But I've been with Cargill for about 2 years, and prior to that I did health research, so I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, glad to have you both, and we're going to have a really great discussion here. Before I get to that, Clay, did you have something else you wanted to add at all?
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the key things we want to do is like the excitement, the reason why people should gather around and pay attention to what we're doing here. And so I think the excitement in this space, and so I grew up as an auctioneer's son. And I always feel like the excitement of environmental outcomes and carbon is just like the same amount of fun that you'd have at an auction. And so what gets me excited is this is like an auction environment. A 2.5 and now to 500, and 7.5 and now $1,000 bill, and would you give me $1,000 bill, and 1,000 now 12.5, 1,000 now 12.5, all in, all done, still for the gate boys, sold it out, $1,000 bill. So if you're a farmer and you're looking to learn about this space, this is why you should jump in, because we're on about year 2 of the next century in agriculture, and we feel environmental outcomes is going to be the future.
Explain environmental outcomes a little bit more. What do you mean by that?
So environmental outcomes is really building up, first of all, the resiliency in your soil. So a lot of farmers, as you think about your farm, your most valuable asset on your farm, it's going to be the soil that you farm. And a lot of farmers will agree with us that climate patterns are maybe more extreme today than what they've ever been, right? Like you get extreme amounts of heavy rainfall or extreme passes of drought, and so building up that soil resiliency is super important. But with that, there's co-benefits. So a co-benefit of building your soil health up is also now this new evolution of the emerging market of carbon. And so that's the cherry on top, is how that builds. And then we see this opening up multiple pathways too. So we have a regeneratively sourced cotton program as well with under our RegenConnect umbrella. And so environmental outcomes, there's going to be a lot of different pathways in the future.
Why should farmers be bullish about something like carbon?
So I think as you look at it, it's a true emerging market. And so me and my family, on our family farm, we talk about this a lot. This might be a once in a generation emerging market. So you think about like my grandfather, my father, we sell cattle, corn, beans, wheat. Now all of a sudden we have this carbon opportunity, right? Like this could be a once in a generation emerging market. And I think the beauty of everybody here at the Commodity Classic and all farmers that are leading in is they get to say the stories like I was there from the beginning. And so I don't know where it could go, but it's definitely got potential as we network with the demand customers. It feels like the demand way outweighs the supply today, and that's a great situation for a farmer to be in.
Anna, let's bring you into the conversation here. Dig a little deeper, if you will, into regenerative agriculture. Can you tell us about what regenerative ag practices technically do to the soil?
Absolutely. So there's a ton of benefits for regenerative ag practices. So I know in our program that's reducing tillage, going to no-till or cover crops. There's a lot of different things that fall under that umbrella, but we see these as having some of the greatest impact on the soil and soil health. There's a ton of really fantastic things, and if you don't mind, I'd love to show you what that actually does.
Let's see that. Please show us, and explain while you're doing this what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of folks maybe have heard or have seen a slate demonstration before, but I think it's a really classic example of what soil health can be or look like on your farm. It's also something that you can actually do on your own farm, which is what I love about it, is that anybody can set it up and anybody can do it. So in front of us, we've got 3 tubes full of water and some baskets inside of them, and then we have 3 soil samples pulled. On the left here, we have a conventionally tilled field, so it's in a disc system, corn and soybean rotation. In the middle, we have a cover crop field, so it's a corn and soy rotation as well, but a continuous no-till and cover crops. And then on the right, we have soil that is from the field edge of actually the same field of the conventional system. So all three of these are the same soil type. These two come from the exact same field. This one comes from the same soil type with just an adjacent field. That's really important when you do a demonstration like this to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, right? So we have the same soil. So what we do here is we're looking at what happens when we submerge these soil aggregates to forces like water, like wind, like air. It looks at the aggregate stability of soil. So as you can see here, we've got soil that has a lot of compaction. It's very tight. There's not a lot of aggregate stability. There's not a lot of room for water and nutrients to actually be able to cycle in the soil. Now I'm going to put that in the demonstration right here. And you can see it's a pretty dramatic immediately when you put it into the tube, right? It all starts falling apart pretty dramatically. Now, when you take a cover crop and no-till system, you can see there's roots in this system, right? There's a lot being held together by those roots, or root exudates as we call them. They're biological glues that hold the soil together. You can see the residue on the top here. We're going to put that one inside the soil tube as well. And then again, from this same field, you're going to see that we actually have a ton of root systems. This has not been disturbed for 70 years. So it's really an example of what the soil would look like without disturbance. So we're going to put that in as well. As you can see immediately, there's a pretty dramatic difference of what's happening in this soil, right? As we look at this one, it's falling apart immediately. What this translates to in the field, water is not getting into this soil, and instead all of this soil is falling apart as it rains. It's running off the field. So all of your nutrients that you're paying for and paying a lot of money for right now is coming off of the field and moving into a waterway. So that's just money being washed away, right? And these two tubes you can see in our no-till and cover crop system and our field edge system, they look very similar. They're doing functionally the same thing. But you can see that there is not as much soil falling off, that the soil is really being kept with the field, and we're really saving money ultimately. And so there's a lot of functional and economic aspects that are really, really valuable in soil health. We can dig more into it, but I get really excited when we do demonstrations like this because you can see such a dramatic difference in the same soil.
So can farmers do this kind of test on their own fields at home?
Absolutely, and that's why we wanted to bring this today. This is something you should be able to take home with you. So a mason jar, a little bit of chicken wire, take soil from your field and from the field edge if you don't have a neighbor that you can take some soil from their field, and just compare the two and see the soil health right in front of your eyes.
Would you say that most farmers are taking advantage of regenerative ag practices like this and making sure that they're really taking care of their soils?
I mean, farmers are great stewards of the land, right? We are not arguing that farmers take care of their land. But we have a lot of new technology that really can help make the transition to regenerative ag practices a lot easier. That's part of my role, is to help farmers actually be able to implement these practices, because there is a little bit of risk. There's a learning curve to regenerative ag practices, and so we want to make sure that they're supported in that transition.
Again, unpack some of those regenerative ag practices that maybe where you see a little bit stronger of the soil if you implemented some of these things.
Absolutely. So, when you're working in the field and you're looking at what's going on, you have to think about what kind of cover crops you're using. What kind of considerations you may take when you're implementing no-till. Are you changing your variety? Does your planter need to be adjusted? All of those things are the kinds of conversations that we have to pay attention to as we get into these practices.
Okay, so thanks for that. I wonder, what about the farmers who may already be doing some of these conservation practices? How are they recognized for what they're doing, and maybe unpack that a little bit for us, Clay.
Yeah, great question, and one that we get a lot, right, is because, man, what if I was already an early adopter and I've been doing these practices? Because a lot of environmental outcomes or carbon programs require that additionality, and I'd say that's the great benefit of working with a company like Cargill in this space, is because we are an innovator of markets and trying to uncap that potential. So what I would say is early adopters, if you're already doing these practices, you maybe aren't eligible for the carbon market today. Be patient. You're doing this for your soil health reasons, just like what Anna's demonstration is showing. That's why you're doing it. The carbon payment's the cherry on top. But as we see this market evolving, like there's going to be different pathways around renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. And the one that's a living, breathing program today, earlier I mentioned our regeneratively sourced cotton program. So that is a program that it doesn't have to be a new practice. Our cotton producers within our cotton business can receive a premium for their cotton bales if they are raised on a cover crop and a reduced tillage type acre. It doesn't matter if they've been doing that for 20 years or 2 years, that opportunity is there. And so is it too far-fetched to believe that that marketplace doesn't evolve to corn, beans, wheat, other commodities? I don't think so. The market just has to continue to mature. And so I think patience and farmers leaning in and learning, and don't rule yourself out too. The other thing I would say too about a lot of early adopters is this last year, our sustainability team and grain origination team across the United States, we met with thousands of farmers. The biggest myth we have is farmers rule themselves out, not eligible. But often what we find out is they get into our platform, which is a best-in-class platform, they find out that I am eligible. I do have opportunities to participate, and which is why we're excited for all of our customers that just signed up this last year are getting their first half of their payment checks this week.
That's a big deal. And before I want to dive in more to that, but before we do, Anna, what about the growers that maybe are new to this? How would you encourage them to embrace soil health practices, ways that they can continue to improve on their farm?
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm working with growers, the first thing we do is we need to understand what their goal is. Do they have issues on their farm that they want to address first? Are you having erosion problems? Let's look at addressing that first and making sure that it makes the most sense for the growers, right? So these are all at a farm solution level, not, we're assigning these practices to everybody for everything, right? We try to be very, very prescriptive when we talk about soil health practices. So a farmer may be interested in a cover crop, or they may be interested in reducing tillage and saving some fuel. There's a lot of different benefits, which really depend on the goal that producer has.
So Clay, going back to you. So tell us a little bit more about the emerging markets and how Cargill is setting farmers up for success through the carbon programs. I know you talked a little bit about that, but maybe dive a little deeper here.
Yeah, so I think Cargill, we're really uniquely positioned in this space because we have a supply chain. We're a 158-year-old company. We have a rich history of working with farmers on their grain commodities, through our grain assets. And so because we have a supply chain where we buy corn, beans, wheat, sorghum, sunflowers, cotton from farmers, on the other side of the supply chain, we have demand customers, food, feed, fiber, fuel companies that we work with on a daily basis. A lot of the names of the big brands that you farmers are all aware of. We can connect that whole supply chain. And so really, we feel like we are really uniquely positioned to connect the seller of the environmental outcomes, and today carbon, the farmer, to the demand customer that has the demand, to really bring that market to light. And that's the key piece that we're trying to do, is help farmers organize their data, tell the story to where they can actually bring their carbon to market.
Anna, if farmers sign up for the RegenConnect program, how do they work with you? What's their role with you?
Absolutely. So they may come and meet me here today, and I'm happy to have that conversation with them. But also we have a ton of local reps, both our grain buyers and our sustainability team, who are able to get connected to me if we don't meet face-to-face or in person. We are very happy to do any sort of in-person consultation, any sort of virtual consultation. We're really, really flexible to meet the customer's needs, and we have a full team of people to be able to support those.
Clay, is there anything else we should know about the program here?
So I think the key things as you look to pick out any program that you want to consider with, it's first of all, how can they bring your carbon to market? What's their market access look like? And do they have enough market access for you to get monetized fully for your carbon credits that you're going to be producing? The second one is what Anna just spoke to, is what support are you going to get? And I would say Cargill, we're proud that we have a whole team here in the Commodity Closet. We've got a team of about 25 people here that are proud to talk to farmers. These are all people that are from your local communities, so reach out to them. All of our grain originators are local to reach out to. The final thing I would say is ease of enrollment. So literally, we want farmers, even if you're not interested in a program today, we want you to know what your carbon potential is on your farm. And so go to our website, cargillregenconnect.com, create an account. Within the matter of a few minutes, you can see how many tons of carbon you could potentially sequester off your farm. We have a live platform that does that, and every farmer needs to at least explore their carbon potential.
That's really cool to think about. And you know, when I visit with farmers, whether anywhere across the Midwest, I think there are a lot of questions about this space, and maybe some hesitation too. And I know you addressed some probably concerns that growers have, but Anna, is there anything else that you think farmers should know if they're just a little skeptical about something like this?
Absolutely. I mean, make sure you have someone that you can trust to talk to. That's a really big deal in this space. We need to have trusted information. But also looking at things like contract length. Cargill RegenConnect is a 1-year contract, and then you renew every year after you sign up. That's a huge deal in the industry. Folks are not ready to commit to 3, 5, 10-year contracts, so we're really, really proud to offer things like that. And again, like the things Clay mentioned before, support, technology, all of those pieces, you got to make sure that you're ready to commit to all of this.
Well, we are nearing the end of our time here today, and as we do, I just want to give an opportunity for you all to share closing remarks. And if we start with Anna and work our way back over.
Absolutely. The phrase that I love to use is that the carbon market is the cherry on top, but as you can see in our demonstration, soil health is the real reason that you want to do this, because we all want your land to be here to produce food for the future, right? Cargill wants you to produce food for the future, we want you to produce food for the future. And so this is how we think that we can continue to do that, and that's the really, really important piece about sustainable and regenerative ag practices.
Yeah, again, I want to revert to the soil health demonstration. I mean, that's powerful. Powerful. If you haven't seen that for the first time, of what that looks like. And you think about it a lot. I mean, land is the farmer's greatest asset, right? That's where they typically have most of their money tied up into. A lot of it's legacy. You know, I know, fortunate that you know, my family has, you know, a lot of family ground, right? That's passed on from generation to generation. I think at the core, we want to leave the land better than what we found it, and that soil health is so critical. But the key point, like this, is also turned into a cash revenue opportunity for farmers to explore their carbon potential. So I would say don't rule it out, because this could be a pretty fun ride. The next few years are going to be really, really exciting. And so my ask would be, if you're at the Commodity Classic, stop by our booth and visit us. We have giveaways, we have prizes. We want to have the information to follow up with you. And we just love the chance to talk to you one-on-one about this space, because we're super passionate about it.
And I know not everyone can be here at the Commodity Classic, and maybe they're tuning in after this goes live. And remind us again where they can go online for more information.
Yeah, visit our website, CargillRegenConnect.com, or if you have a relationship with Cargill currently, find your local Cargill grain originator and your local community, reach out to them, and they'll be happy to help you, or visit our website, and we'll be in touch.
Well, Clay and Anna, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time to talk about this really awesome opportunity for growers and soil health. I mean, it's really important to all of us, right? In the ag industry, it's at the heart of all that we do and produce. Thank you all again for joining us. If you're joining us remotely, to take a closer look at carbon and the markets and the opportunities that are ahead. And if you are still around, or you're here at the Commodity Classic, be sure to stop back on by the Cargill booth. We'll be having more conversations coming up this morning, and if you're joining us virtually, you can see those streams too, the same way that you tuned in today, and join us more for a farmer's perspective on carbon markets and what they're doing on their farm to invest in soil health. Again, I'm Carah Hart with Brownfield Ag News, coming to you from the Cargill booth at the Commodity Classic.